Peace and love, black family. This is the Prince of Pan-Africanism, Dr. Umar Johnson, Black America's #1 certified school psychologist. I am live in San Salvador with my good brother Chris. We are at the landing site of Christopher Columbus. We all know who that was, a man who erroneously has been given credit for the founding of the so-called New World. You cannot find a place that is already inhabited by other human beings. You cannot discover a place that has already been found by other human beings. Christopher Columbus is significant and unique in both African world history and European world history because it was Christopher Columbus who began in 1492 the rise of global white supremacy. Had he not been given directions, specific instructions, in fact, a map from our African ancestors on how to get here to the so-called New World, had he never been given that information from our people, he may have never arrived, and white supremacy may never have existed. White power may currently not be in control of the planet. Christopher Columbus, a man whose origin is still subject to some speculation, but a man whose acts, without question, are not subject to speculation. When he arrived in the so-called New World, which is the Caribbean and the Americas, he is responsible for decimating the native population by more than 50%. Christopher Columbus was also charged, many people don't know this, he was charged for crimes against humanity when he returned back to Europe. Even members of his own crew took issue with the bestial and inhumane way in which he treated the native Africans who got here. And the reason we can say Native Africans instead of Native Americans, because according to Christopher Columbus's own journal, his own law, his own words, he said that he found black-skinned, nappy-headed people who looked just like the ones he saw in Africa. And for those of you who don't know, without question, Christopher Columbus visited Africa before he came to America. He did not find anything. He was taught how to get here. Why our ancestors told him that, we will never know. Why did our ancestors let the white man into Africa freely to do whatever he wanted? We don't know that either. But what we do know is that Columbus coming here was no accident. In fact, it is general knowledge on the western coast of Africa that there are certain winds, certain currents, that if your ship can catch one of them and just go along with the pace and direction of the wind, it will bring you to the Caribbean, and it will bring you to Central South America and even North America. Africans have been the first to circumnavigate the globe. We are the first people in every continent. So it is impossible for a white man who didn't come out of the caves until thousands of years after we had built the highest civilizations. It is impossible for humanity's youngest child to have discovered anything when humanity's oldest child, the African, had already been everywhere. Columbus, and the reason why he continues to be celebrated by white people, white history, white scholars, and white scientists, the reason why they refuse to concede that he did not discover America is because he is the central driving force responsible for the white man's current rule in the world today. Prior to Columbus coming here, white people thought the earth was flat, and that if they go too far, they would fall off. Prior to Columbus coming here, Europeans didn't think it was possible for them to survive the temperature and the so-called diseases and the animals and the so-called natives. They didn't think they could survive it. So Columbus was able to prove to the white man that not only could you survive, the so-called New World, Not only could you reach it without falling off the tip of the earth, but that you could dominate it as well. Columbus wrote in his diaries that with only a population of a few people, we could and control the entire population of the so-called New World. Columbus misinterpreted, as so many Europeans do. He misinterpreted the humanity and the compassion and the hospitality of our ancestors. And they treated it as weakness and they treated it as naivety. It's the same thing they did in Africa. And because our people were so humane and so genuine to Columbus and his crew, Columbus and his crew, not being humane, took that as a sign that they would be able to dominate the brothers and sisters here. And that's exactly what they did, creating a genocide, a so-called Holocaust in the New World, the likes of which we had not seen until after Columbus's death. So, brothers and sisters, we need to be crystal clear that we are not to support Columbus, not just because his so-called founding of America was a lie. We know that. But we also cannot support Columbus because his so-called landing in America was the catalyst for the rise of global white supremacy. And more importantly, there is evidence that suggests that Columbus had Africans on his ship, that there were black people who took the journey with Columbus, who had already ventured to the New World before. And it was those Africans who were most responsible for him getting here. Columbus, if you were to describe him with an adjective, I don't know if there's an adjective that could properly convey what he did to us. Exterminationist, a terrorist, because that's exactly what he did. Christopher Columbus was an African world terrorist, which is ironic because right now the European seeks to identify and label anyone who disagrees with his policies as a terrorist. Well, how can you be anti-terrorism when your number one hero in world history is one of the greatest terrorists of all time? Brother Chris.
All right, man. So you all have it here live and direct from San Salvador, right? And just to add what the Prince was saying, so one of these black people that was on the ship was a man by the name of Pedro Alonso Nino. They used to call him Pedro the Moor. And as a matter of fact, he was behind the helm in the Santa Maria. Okay, so it even shows you that Columbus himself was a complete idiot. And then he actually stole the loggings of that route from Pedro Alonso Nino and kept it for himself so that he'd be able to come back. And that was how he's able to keep coming back to the so-called New World. All right. Now, the group that was here when he arrived were called the Lucayans. And this area prior to Columbus's arrival, this island was called Guanahani. All right. And a lot of Bahamians been asking me, and I might have to break your heart, sorry, digress, but this actually is the island where Columbus landed. And if you read his journals, he describes the island pretty well. And one of the things that stands out is he says that the island was mostly water in the middle. And only two islands really fit that description in the modern day Bahamas. All right. And when Columbus came here, there are between 50 and 70,000 Lucayan people in the entire Bahamas. All right. And he, as Dr. Umar said, he wiped them out. He even did things like use their meat as dog food for his dogs. One of the first things this man did was set up brothels for prepubescent girls. There's absolutely no way, nothing good that we have to say about Christopher Columbus. And of course, we here in San Salvador, knowing the gracious people who live here in San Salvador, who ancestors slave and toil on this land, they got to drive past this monument every day. And there's absolutely nothing there to commemorate our Ma'afa being the African Holocaust, or even the Holocaust of other indigenous peoples all around the world on this side of the world. You understand? And then in Nassau, in New Providence, we drive past the most prominent statue in our entire country, which is Christopher Columbus. This statue, they told us to lie that, the slaves built this statue because they were angry that the governor was leaving and they loved this governor who was there, James Carmichael Smith. But what we find out now is that this statue was actually commissioned by a man by the name of Washington Irving. Washington Irving was the same man who wrote Sleepy Hollow. So this statue that we have, that is the most prominent statue in our entire country, and has been for a very long time, you understand? This statue was actually a part of the propaganda that turned Columbus into a hero. And if you look at the Bahama Argus in May 1832, they have the documents right there where it says that Columbus ordered the statue and it was commissioned by Washington Irving and it came from Venice and it was right there stuck at the harbor. So none of our ancestors played a role in the building of this marble statue that stands there. All right, and all of this was just one big part of the big propaganda machine done by Washington Irving. And even though the Bahama Argus was a racist newspaper, a racist pro-slavery newspaper at that, they were still able to ridicule James Carmichael Smith and particularly Washington Irving for even trying to present Christopher Columbus as a hero. So you even had racist, serious slave masters or enslavers, I should say, who saw Christopher Columbus as a devil, but we supposed to see him as a hero. And now today, we have more people, more places named after Christopher Columbus than any other person in the world. So I'd like to thank Dr. Umar Johnson for being here. It's really surreal. It's powerful. This is history in the making. A lot of people say, when someone's making history, they don't know, but we can definitely see that. And to help the Prince of Pan-Africanism come to Little San Salvador to contextualize Columbus, contextualize Alma Alpha, it's something that I'm extremely grateful for, and I'm sure the entire Bahamas and even wider the entire African diaspora needs to know these things, and we need to come together to fight against these neo-colonial sentiments that still plague our communities. All right, so this is Christopher Davis, African of Ube, with the Prince of Pan-Africanism, aka Real Monger, and we out.